Thanks so much for hopping on. Obviously, a very historic day as President Trump has just announced the first phase of this peace deal. Let's dive into it. First, I'm going to start with you, Mariam. You've been doing this and covering this extensively there with the Foundation of Defense of Democracies, Federation, excuse me, the Defense of Democracies. The FDD's been talking about this. We've been watching everything. What was your initial reaction to seeing that this deal and the first phase has officially been signed?
Well, it's good to be with you tonight, Christina, on a momentous night. Obviously, this has been 2 years in the making. We are 24 months onto a long and tremendous war that the Israelis have engaged in after the October 7th massacre committed by Hamas. And this is an important and pivotal moment in this war. Obviously, we know that President Trump was keen on getting a deal done, and the timeline was set earlier this week. And in the past few months, the President and Secretary Rubio have made it clear that this deal needs to happen. And the fact that it's being done in Egypt is important, and the fact that it's being done now is even more important. And I think as we begin to learn some of the more nuanced details of the deal, more will be uncovered on what exactly this means. What did Hamas agree to? What concessions was Israel able to make? And what skin in the game do the Arab countries, particularly Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey, and the U.S. have moving forward?
And I think you pointed out something that's very important for our viewers at home to understand, is that with this initial announcement, very few details. And so that's yet to be seen as to really what this means and how it will play out. But again, political analyst Brian Sobel is here with us as well. Brian, I'm going to ask you about some of the other portions of this deal that sort of go into the political side, especially as it pertains to President Trump. And so with him deciding to make this announcement on his own platform, Truth Social, what does this mean for the legacy of the Trump administration as they played a major portion in closing out a war that impacted so many countries all around the world, with some folks tearing different sides? I have to ask you, what does this mean for his legacy, and why was it so important for him, as you think, maybe to put his face in front of it?
Well, to what has happened now, we are waiting to see the details. These kinds of deals in the Middle East have been fragile forever, and they tend to unravel quite often. So now at this juncture, the hope is that this deal will stick. And of course, Donald Trump, who has been talking a lot about all the wars he's stopped around the world, this is, other than Ukraine, the number one place in the world where for so many decades war has been prevalent. And so I think Donald Trump views this as you point out, as a legacy issue. But I think we also have to think about the ability of past presidents to find peace in the Middle East. It's been very difficult. If Donald Trump can pull this off, it's a major, major win.
And it might be a major win. I want to put this up on the screen. This is from Trey Yingst there at Fox News. Of course, we rely on him heavily as he is their Middle East correspondent, saying President Trump announces that Israel and Hamas signed off on the first phase of the peace plan. Israeli media reports that living hostages are expected to be released on Saturday. The IDF will pull back forces to agreed upon lines. If things go as planned, the war and I mean, powerful words there from Trey Yingst. This is what so many people have been waiting to hear for the last 2 years. Mariam, I want to ask you, Saturday, are you going to be sitting on pins and needles to see if this truly happens? What other indicators are you all there at the FDD or other agencies going to be watching to make sure that this goes as planned and those hostages are released?
Absolutely. I think you put it succinctly. What we've learned from ceasefire deals in the past 24 months is that they come together much faster and much easier than they fall apart. These things fall apart in moments. But the good news is that we have some vested and invested parties here, whether the Israelis, the Americans, the Turks, the Qataris, and the Egyptians. There seem to be, all of these parties seem to have skin in the game when it comes to making this deal hold. Now, it will really fall on Hamas shoulders to follow through with the hostage release. We're hearing early reports alleging that some 20 plus hostages are still alive, and that they will be part of the initial phase of the ceasefire, and with the deceased, the murdered hostages coming at a later phase. In the coming days, I think what will be really important to watch is just how much pressure the Arab countries, the Arab mediators that have been part of this deal, continue to put on Hamas to ensure that they hold up their side of the deal.
And so, Brian, I want to ask you this. When it comes to these negotiations that happen between different nations, how difficult is it to get all players to come to the table and really agree? I mean, when we're talking about this significant meeting that's happened there, we heard that the United States was present. We know that someone that was sent from Benjamin Netanyahu's office was also present, as well as representatives from other nations, including Qatar and Turkey. How difficult is it to make something like that happen between leaders from all over?
Incredibly difficult, and history shows us that putting all those people into a room is incredibly difficult. And when one studies the history of the Middle East, you could see why. They are at cross purposes in many, many different ways, these various countries. But Mariam hits the nail on the head. You have a lot of players at the table with this agreement that have not heretofore played a major role. I mean, they've been involved. Egypt's been involved, and the Turks and others. But we've been waiting for the longest time, Christina, for these countries to actually say, hey, enough is enough in the Middle East, and the killing has to be brought to a halt. And again, that hasn't been the case in past years, but we all are, as you say, on pins and needles that this may hold, that the hostages will be released, that those who have passed will also, their remains will be released, and eventually we can get on with the rebuilding of Gaza and the relief for the people who live there.
This will certainly change the shape of what we know as the Middle East now, putting up this live shot once again there in Gaza. Again, this has been officially now reported by the Associated Press, so I want to make sure that I put it out for our viewers as well as, even though we just touched on it. But this is from the AP, that Hamas plans to release all 20 living hostages this weekend. People familiar with the matter told the AP, while the Israeli military will begin that withdrawal from the majority of Gaza. That's similar to what we heard there from Trey Yingst there with Fox News as well. And so as we're continuing to dive into really what's going to happen next, Mariam, I think you brought up a good point, talking about the fact that some of these ceasefire agreements over the last 24 months have come and gone. And so with significant portions here, let's talk a little bit about the families. They should be optimistic at this point, but what have they been really talking about in the wake of those attacks and not seeing their loved ones for now 2 years' time?
Absolutely. I mean, the Hostage Families Forum has been outspoken throughout these last 24 months, rightfully so, demanding the release of brothers, sons, daughters, husbands, wives, whether it be alive hostages or deceased ones, and some of them don't even know. So this is really a momentous time for Israel and the Israeli people, knowing that their hostages are coming home or their deceased are coming home. And this has really been the pain point of this war, right? We've seen several ceasefire agreements come and go, and the hostages has remained top of mind, top of priority for the Israelis and the Americans. We need to get these hostages home. And I mean, think about it. I remember where I was on the morning of October 7th, and I know how much life has happened between that day and today. And think about if you were a captive, a prisoner, a hostage in Hamas, in tunnels for 24 months as bombs are being dropped on Gaza, and Israel has proceeded with its offensive to try to free those hostages. So I think seeing those hostages, the alive ones, be free, be released by Hamas on Saturday will be a very pivotal moment for the Israeli people, for Israel as a whole, seeing them come home. And what comes next will determine what the Middle East will look like. If I were to pinpoint one thing that I would be watching in the days after those hostages are released, are how Hamas behaves. And as we learn more about what the ceasefire agreement details about things like disarmament and post-Gaza war governance, where did the U.S., where did the White House allow those things to land? How much pressure has Qatar and Egypt been inflicted on Hamas to give up some of those concessions that the Americans and Israelis have deemed non-negotiables in ending this war?
And those non-negotiables have been something that have been very focused on. Taking this live look there in Jerusalem, another look that we've often been seeing here over the last 2 years as so many different stages of this war have developed. I do want to continue on with this conversation and just getting an understanding here. Brian, this might be a great question for you to answer as well. Mariam, please feel free to hop in. But I have to ask, why was Benjamin Netanyahu himself not present at these talks? It's interesting to hear that, again, his office sent a representative, very high up representative there for Israel. But why was he himself not there to have these negotiations in Egypt?
It's pure speculation on my part, but typically the head of state is not in those kinds of negotiations because they have to be the ones that have to either explain the success or the failure, and particularly the failure. And Benjamin Netanyahu has been under incredible pressure in Israel, even as Israel has had great success in knocking down and knocking out these terrorists in that region. And so I think it's a way for the chief executive, in this case Benjamin Netanyahu, to be one step removed in case things don't go well. But what we have to wait for here are more details. Whatever Hamas gave up in this agreement will be key to watch. Mariam touched on that. And if they have to give up weaponry, as an example, how does that happen? We do know that that area hit a tipping point, quite probably, as many people who live in Gaza and are not fans of obviously of what has gone on. I think the pressure on Hamas to stop the fighting and to find some role in the future of Gaza, but who knows what that'll be, played a big part here. It was just not sustainable for Hamas to continue to hold down the people in Gaza and continue this war. It just wasn't going to keep going that way. And at the same time, ironically, tremendous pressure on Bibi Netanyahu to find a solution to this. So I think it was one of these deals that just the confluence of many events came together to produce this arrangement today. And we hope, of course, that it can stick.
I'm going to put up this on the screen as well. This is the statement there from Netanyahu. We visited the statement a bit earlier on in the hour, but it says, quote, "A great day for Israel. Tomorrow I will convene the government to approve the agreement and bring all of our dear hostages home. I thank the heroic soldiers of the IDF and all of the security forces, thanks to whose courage and sacrifice we have reached this day. I thank from the depths of my heart President Trump and his team for the mobilization for this sacred mission of releasing our hostages. With the help of the Almighty, together we will continue to achieve all of our goals and expand peace with our neighbors." Mariam, I'd like to get your reaction to seeing the statement that was put out on social media, specifically by Netanyahu.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a couple things that stand out to me, and I looking at President Trump's statement and looking at Bibi Netanyahu's statement, there are similarities. It seems like there was some sort of agreement on the language used. The one last line that stands out to me in both of these statements is thanking the Lord, thanking a God, whether it be the Christian God or Jewish God. And I think there's quite this moment of this is really nothing short of a miracle on all parties, and seeing it come together just a day after the 2-year anniversary of the October 7th attack really reflects that.
And so we're continuing to also get some more reaction. Thank you for that insight, Mariam. I want to put this up on the screen as well. This is from some of those U.S. senators now finally starting to speak out as well on social media. Brian, I want to understand and maybe get your reaction to this. This is from Senator John Fetterman, a notable Democrat. He says, "I congratulate President Trump on this historic peace plan that releases all of the hostages. Now enduring peace in the region is possible. Our parties are different, but we have a shared ironclad commitment to Israel and its people." This is interesting because he's a very prominent member of the Democratic Party. And so many folks over the last 2 years have really wondered where the line stands between both of these parties on the issue of what's happening between the war in Israel and Hamas, and between the two of them. What's your reaction to seeing Fetterman speaking up on social media?
Senator Fetterman's reaction is not surprising. He has been a stalwart friend of Israel since the beginning, since October 7, that horrible massacre when that occurred, and he has over and over again spoken out about needing to support Israel and supporting the president in this regard. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays with other Democrats. This is an undeniable win for Donald Trump. If peace can truly be found in the Middle East, and we've been talking about it all of our lives, if it can truly be found, then Donald Trump gets the credit in large part for it, because even in the last few days where he basically told Hamas, either you sign on to this deal or it is really all over for you. Some people might call that rhetoric, but in the world, those words mean something, especially in certain nations that are governed by the gun. And so Donald Trump's going to have to take credit for this, and will take credit for it. We'll see over the next couple days whether people can set aside their politics, their political ideologies, to call it what it is, which is a huge success for the president, for the administration, and frankly, for Bibi Netanyahu and the Israeli government, because I'm sure they had to also give up some things in this agreement, which, again, we wait to see the details of.
We continue to wait as more of those details will come out. But again, I was just handed this note by our producer. This was put out by the Associated Press. Want to make sure that we're getting in all of the updates here for everyone watching at home. Hamas has also officially now announced that deal. They announced a deal that's now leading to the end of the war in Gaza, the withdrawal of Israeli troops, aid entry, and prisoner exchange. And so they're the last group now that's kind of spoken up to affirm that this deal is in place. And so, Mariam, what's your reaction to the group Hamas now saying that they're also announcing this thing? Do you feel like this makes it more steady, more sure in the eyes of those who are really waiting for those hostages to be returned?
Absolutely. I think it was vital that the president announced it first, the American president announced this first, and I think it was also vital that we heard from Bibi Netanyahu saying that he'll be demanding that his government vote to move towards to agreeing to ceasefire. But Hamas's statement is just as important. They are the party that has held out time and time again to agreeing to a ceasefire. I think, again, I know my colleague Brian and I are going around a little bit in circles here, worrying about the details of the deal, because we know the price of ceasefire deals. We know what the price that Israel has had to pay in the last 24 months for the small, brief ceasefire deals. They've had to release hundreds of convicted terrorists and murderers. And I think we're waiting to see what the price Israel has had to pay this time. How many terrorists do they have to release? And what was the cost of getting those hostages? What was the cost of retreating from Gaza and allowing Hamas a little bit of breathing room? Because we have to remember, this is still a battlefield. Hamas is still very much present in Gaza. They are very much militant, have the weapons, have the missiles, have the bullets to continue a war, but they're choosing to come to this ceasefire because all the factors, whether it's pressure from the Egyptians and the Qataris or a number of other factors, have led them to this point.
It's interesting to see so many details, as you say. You're waiting for it. We're waiting for it. We want to bring it to folks. But as soon as we get confirmation of any more details with this initial phase of the Gaza deal, we'll certainly bring it to folks here on Live Now from Fox. My last question before I let both of you go, and I can have either one of you answer. I'll start with you, Brian. But the thing that I think back to, one of the biggest incidents of the year happened to be involving Iran and the incursion that they had in their battle against Israel as well. Is there going to continue to be any fallout from that? Could this deal will this possibly be affected by that at all?
Well, the Iranians have become kind of a second story here, Christina. After the Israeli action against Iran, which claimed that it couldn't be touched really by the Israeli military, and they found out the hard way that they could, along with the assistance of the United States. I think that helped reshape the battlefield and reshape the peace process in the region. I think that helped other countries say, hey, we can get involved in this and we can bring the killing in the region to an end, in Gaza, in southern Lebanon, in Yemen, and the biggest problem in the region, in Iran. So if this agreement results in other countries having the courage to sit together and say there isn't going to be killing in this region anymore, we are going to find a peace after decades and decades, then the world benefits, and that may be the good news tonight.
Mariam?
Look, we have to remember that the Islamic regime in Tehran is the head of the snake here. We have Hamas, we have Hezbollah, we have all their tentacles, all their proxies, all their militant groups that they help fund, train, and arm. And that is not a finished battle whatsoever. We've seen the Israelis go in there and limit or deter the Islamic regime in Tehran. And we've obviously seen the White House follow up with some really important strikes on Iran's nuclear program. And those were pivotal moments in shaping the future of the Middle East, but I think it would be unwise to call that fight finished.
And so it's something that we'll continue to watch here on Live Now from Fox. I want to deeply thank Brian Sobel, political analyst, for joining us here on the show, as well as Mariam Wahba. They are research analysts at the FDD. Your insight has been invaluable to helping our viewers understand what's happening as this breaking news has come out that President Trump announced that the first phase there of the Israel and Hamas war, they've agreed to that to come to an end, and hopefully the hostages will be returning home. It's been announced it's going to happen on Saturday, so I appreciate your time here on Live Now.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Christina.